board.net.
Okay.
Okay. So the town council is also tonight?
And go down there.
I don't know that we have so much.
Good evening, everyone. Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey, at 7:30 p.m. on the evening of Tuesday, October 15th, 2019, in the boardroom of the Administration Building, 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business that come properly before the board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded in the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Thursday, October 10th, 2019, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education, located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Tap into Westfield, and Patch.com, and a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Dana, can we have a roll call?
Michael Beelan.
Here.
Kent Diamond.
Here.
Brendan Galligan.
Here.
Robert Garrison.
Here.
Brian Marcy.
Here.
Gretchen Olick.
Here.
Tara Porto.
Here.
Peggy Astor.
Here.
Amy Root.
Here.
Thank you. Rob, would you like to lead us in a flag salute?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let's start with announcements. Rob, do you have any?
I do. I have one. The Westfield High School Theater Department will present the historical drama Radium Girls, based on the real-life story of a group of female factory workers who contracted radiation poisoning from painting watch dials during World War I and fought Race Against Time for Justice. The fall production will be performed in the high school auditorium on Thursday, November 21st at 4 p.m. and on Friday and Saturday, November 22nd and 23rd at 7:30 p.m. Information on ticket sales will be available on the Westfield High School Theater Department website in the coming weeks.
Thank you. Kara?
Yes, I have two. The next meeting of the Parent-Teacher Council, PTC, will be held on Wednesday, October 30th at 10:15 a.m. in the board meeting room at 302 Elm Street. The PTC is the umbrella organization for all 10 of the Westfield School PTOs. At these monthly meetings, PTO presidents meet with the PTC board, Superintendent Dr. Margaret Dolan, and a representative of the Board of Education. These are public meetings which all parents are welcome and encouraged to attend. More information on the PTC, including a meeting schedule, can be found under the Family Resources tab on the district website. Team McKinley recently raised nearly $2,000 for autism research and awareness at the Autism Speaks Walk in Cranford. Special thanks to the organizer and teacher Jennifer Ulrich and to all members of the McKinley school community who participated.
Thank you. Michael?
Yes. For only the second time in Westfield High School history, the Blue Devil Marching Band was chosen as one of 10 finalists at the Bands of America Mid-Atlantic Regional held this year at the University of Maryland on March 5th. The Blue Devils finished third in their class and 7th overall by the preliminary daytime contest among 26 bands from 6 states. The bands finished 7th at the evening finals contest under the leadership of drum majors Teresa Lizzo, Christian Sawina, and Robert Strauss, their highest placement ever at the Bands of Achievement event. Additionally, the marching band Blue Devils placed first in their class at the recent Scotch Plains Marching Band Festival, while receiving the Grand Champion Award of all bands attending the competition. Congratulations to our marching band Blue Devils and the band directors Trevor Sindorf and Christopher Vitale.
Thank you. Brendan?
Yep. Congratulations to the following Westfield High School students who achieved perfect scores in subject areas on the August SAT. Mark Filetta, Math Level 2. Mara Mehta, Math and Evidence-Based Reading and Writing. Maxwell Scialaba, Math Level 2. And Madeline Stack, Math Level 2.
Great, thank you. Brian?
Washington School has been named a National Blue Ribbon School, one of 9 schools in New Jersey to be recognized in 2019. Created in 1982, the National Blue Ribbon Schools program recognizes outstanding public and non-public school achievement for overall academic excellence and/or progress in closing achievement gaps among student subgroups. On November 14th and 15th, U.S. Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos will celebrate with 312 public and 50 non-public school honorees at an award ceremony in the Washington, D.C. area. Superintendent Dr. Margaret Dolan, Principal Dr. Andrew Perry, and 5th grade teacher Matthew Cognetti will attend the ceremony to accept the award. A celebration for the Washington school community will be held in December to honor all those who have contributed over the years to this important recognition.
Great, thank you. Ken?
Yes. 2 of our Westfield High School athletic coaches recently reached career milestones. Head football coach James DeSarno reached his 100th career victory as the Blue Devils defeated Elizabeth 34-6 on October 4th. And head volleyball coach Beverly Turok earned her 500th varsity win last month, joining coaches George Kapner, Bob Brewster, and the late Gary Keller in attaining this spectacular achievement. Congratulations to coaches Turok and DeSarno. And secondly, meet the candidates running for the Westfield Board of Education as the Parent-Teacher Council holds a candidates night on Wednesday, October 23rd from 7:30 to 9 p.m. in the Westfield High School auditorium. The evening will be moderated with candidates asked a variety of questions to be gathered from the public prior to the forum. Questions may be submitted to ptc@westfieldnjk12.org by October 22nd. More information on the forum and the candidates can be found under the Board tab on the district website. Thanks.
Thank you. Gretchen?
Yes, I have 2 as well. So Westfield High School seniors Eitan Zeller McLean, Luke Pardo, and Sandrine Perez have been, there's like an echo, right? So I'm just, okay. Have been named 2019-2020 National Hispanic Scholars as part of the College Board National Hispanic Recognition Program. According to the College Board, the program honors more than 7,000 academically outstanding Hispanic Latino juniors each year who achieve a qualifying score on the PSAT National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test for their region and maintain a cumulative junior year grade point average of 3.5 or higher. Congratulations to all of these students on this prestigious recognition. And secondly, the Westfield High School Choir presents the 2nd annual Guys Night of Singing on Friday, October 25th from 6 to 8:30 p.m. in the Westfield High School auditorium. The event is open to any male students in grades 7 through 12 and to Westfield dads, teachers, Board of Ed members, and guys of all ages who like to sing. Performance by special guests, the Groove Barbers, begins at 8 p.m. Contact Westfield High School Choral Director John Brzezowski at 908-789-4500 or extension 4549, or Jay Brzezowski at westfieldnjk12.org. I'm going to spell his last name. JBRZOZOWSKI. If you're interested in participating or have any questions, that's the way to reach Mr. Brzezowski. Thanks.
That's so interesting that the male board members are invited also.
They are specifically. Brendan has to wear a tux.
I'm busy that day.
I'm with Brendan.
I don't even know what the date is, but I'm busy.
It's a great
October
thing.
25th from 6 to 8:30. Yeah.
Friday night.
Oh, right, Friday night.
Great, thank you. Amy?
Yep, I have one announcement. Save the dates for our intermediate school fall dramas. Edison Intermediate School presents the comedy Whodunit, Clue on Stage, on Wednesday, October 30th at 4 p.m. and Friday, there's a gap because of Halloween being on Thursday, and then again Friday and Saturday, November 1st and 2nd at 7 p.m. Ticket sales for the Friday and Saturday performances begin on October 28th after school in the Edison vestibule at $8 pre-sale or $10 at the door on the day of the performance. General admission tickets for the special preview matinee on October 30th will be sold only at the door that day for $5. And then Roosevelt Intermediate School's fall production will be The Outsiders, a coming-of-age drama by S.E. Hinton. A preview performance will be held at 4 p.m. on Thursday, November 14th, followed by performances on Friday and Saturday, November 15th and 16th at 7 p.m. All tickets are $10 and can be purchased online at ris.booktix, that's TIX.com, or at the door. All right. Stay gold, pony boy. Sorry, it's a line from The Outsiders. Okay, that's all.
Dr. Dolan, do you have any announcements?
I don't, but I think Dana Sullivan does have one.
So I was notified today by a local dentist that a company reached out to her dental office and was saying that they're running a program with Franklin School, like some kind of safety program where they wanted all kinds of information from kids. So that is not something that Franklin School was involved with at all. I will probably notify the police tomorrow so they can investigate. I literally just got this right before I came here. But there was an incident prior to this where a Texas-based firm was going out saying they were working with us for fundraising. So we just want to make a general announcement that none of these programs, we don't use third-party companies to do this kind of thing. So if anybody is contacted by any of these companies, please check with my office before you do anything, because they're in all likelihood not real. So.
There was a parent who was contacted?
It was a parent who also happens to be a dentist and has a practice in town. So her practice was contacted through email. Yeah.
Wow. And luckily, she called the school to find out if
Yeah.
it was real.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And, do reach out to Dana's office if you have any other instances like this or
Anything that's, that says they're working on our behalf, because
Right.
nobody really works on our behalf for this kind of thing.
No, we don't use third parties, that's true.
No,
Right,
yeah.
You hear from the organization or the parents involved.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I have one last announcement, and this is to remind everybody that the next meeting of the Westfield Board of Education will be held on Tuesday, October 29th at 7:30 p.m. at 302 Elm Street. The complete agenda will be available on Friday, October 25th on the board section of the district website. Thank you, everybody. I'd like to, at this time, recognize the public for agenda items only. Agenda items only. Seeing nobody come forth to the podium, we'll move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Noel.
Thank you, and tonight there are actually two reports. The first one is the annual requirement from the state for us to share the results of all the student assessments that are mandated by the state. And so that presentation will be conducted by Mr. Paul Pinero, who will give us a rundown of how all of our students did and all of the assessments that are required, so we'll have an understanding of that.
We paid a lot of money for those cue cards. I like to read it off while I'm working. So, good evening. How's everybody? As Dr. Dolan mentioned, I'm here to present the performance, the test scores on the assessments that we needed to take. That's part of our data collection. We add that to the things that teachers observe in students every day, but we also have the state information. We have our own assessments. So it's just one piece of what we use to determine our students' progress, areas of strength, and potential areas for growth. So, this way. These are the assessments that are required of us. So there's this, used to be PARC, right? But now it's the New Jersey Student Learning Assessments, which are based on the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. We are testing students in grades 3 through 10. And as it mentions there, in ELA this particular year, the state did not provide comparative data, because when it comes to grade 11, I think I said grade 11, that's the grade where a lot of students can opt to use an alternative assessment for it, so SATs, ACTs. So if you don't see grade 11, that's the reason why the state doesn't provide comparative data, and 90%, just to jump ahead, 90% of our students used an alternate means for like ELA, for example. So it's not in there, but all the rest is. So there's mathematics in grades 3 through 8, and then the end of course assessments, which are Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2. Then there's two other assessments in here for certain subgroups. One is the Access for English Language Learners, affectionately known as the ELLs. And those are, that's an assessment specific to the proficiency of acquiring English language. And that is a federal requirement, and it's also a really good tool for us to know when our students are ready to not need services and be able to move on from there, just to get a sense of their readiness in their language proficiencies. Then there's something called the dynamic learning maps for students. That's a small population. It's 5. When we get to that, I'll remind you of that. But so there are 5 students with significant intellectual disabilities. So the state does include in its language requirements, its regulations, that all students will be assessed so that we can mark the growth and track the growth of all students. So it would make sense that there be an assessment, but the DLMs, the dynamic learning maps, are adaptive. So as students answer a question, it adjusts to their ability to move forward with it. Okay, so those are you're probably pretty familiar with these by now, but those are the 5 levels for the NJSLA tests. So you need a 4 or 5 for passing, and what you'll be seeing tonight is the composite of 4s and 5s as a percentage relative to the state, and then level 1 is not meeting, and 2 is partially meeting, and 3 is approaching grade level expectations. Okay, so what I've done here is we have the entire English language arts comparison for total population. So this is everyone who had a valid test score in 2019. And so working from the left, it's grade 3 through 10 in ELA. So what you'll see all night is, well, not all night, it won't be that long, but for the duration of the presentation, there are gaps. I mean, so what we look for, in the old days, you would have something called district factor groups, where it would be very specific, your comparison to peer groups, school. At this point, we only have available the states. So what we look for then, as a result, is much of a gap between us and the state's performance, because we expect to be able to perform at high levels relative to the total population of New Jersey. So what you'll see here and what you see throughout is that we look for those gaps. So that's the ELA, English Language Arts. This is math. So you'll see again 3 through 8, and then Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2. And a couple things worth pointing out. The Algebra 1 scores include half of the 8th graders, because 50% of the population in 8th grade takes algebra. So those scores are included in the Algebra 1. So that, conversely, that would mean that the grade 8 score does not include the Algebra 1 students in 8th grade. So where it says grade 8, so that's the Math 8 test, that's 50% of the grade 8 population, and then Algebra 1 includes, with the high school kids, it also includes 50% of the 8th grade.
Is that why the score overall in 8th grade is lower? Because you're going to get higher performing students, I assume, would take algebra and don't have to take the Math 8 test?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, still outperforming the state, but at the same time, and yeah. So
It just looks significant that the 8th grade is such.
Right, and both at the state and
Yeah.
and our level, and that's true around the state. I mean, Algebra 1 is it's good for 8th grade. It's a good sign if that chart is a good sign, because it means a lot of 8th grade students throughout the state and in Westfield are taking Algebra 1 at a low grade level, which is it's good rigor. It's a good indicator of rigor. So, and then it's worth pointing out that 2/3 of the 11th graders in math used either the SAT, ACT, or some other alternate graduation requirement to meet the requirement, so they didn't have to test 11th graders. Why do I keep doing that? So then we also break down the total population. So you've seen the total population in ELA and in math. And then right now we'll be going through the subgroup populations. So the first group is under the category that the state calls student groups. So 2.1% of our population are economically disadvantaged. So the state provides data for that at the state level and our own level. And 18.6% of our students are students with disabilities, and 0.7% are English language learners. So here's our economically disadvantaged performance. Now, the note on the bottom just points out that, so as you saw, it's a small population, economically disadvantaged. It's an important one for us to, of course, track and look for ways to help and improve students. But when we put the, in chart form, I've put them in grade spans because if you have a number of 20 or fewer in a particular grade, then it's not considered, what's the good language there? It's supposed to be suppressed, meaning it's not, you might say that it's statistically not significant to say that 9 students represent a whole grade level. So what I did to work with that was to combine them into grade spans, and then we do get the N of 20. So that's the result of that. So that's economically disadvantaged. This is the special ed subgroup. In ELA, 3 through 10. And then back to economically disadvantaged. This is math now. Again, we didn't have to do it with the special ed population because it's not as small. But again, economically disadvantaged, we did the grade span. And then there's special education and mathematics.
Just a quick question,
Sure.
Paul. I mean, you can see it here, and we've seen it on some of the other slides. Obviously, as you said, we like to see when, we like to maintain a gap to show that our kids are doing better, which we like. But then the other, I think the very first slide we looked at was sort of like a steady progression of, you know, everybody did better from one year to the next, both the state and us. But here, where you see variability from year to year, both in our total school, I guess, numbers and the state numbers, is
Yes.
that because there's just some variability in terms of test questions that particular year, do you think? Or?
That's a very good question, and I'm glad you brought it up, because what it indicates is, because it's at a state level too, you see the dip, that that's where grades 6, 7, and 8, if you remember a few years back when there was a lot of talk about how the rigor increased with the PARCC testing, and it was giving unrealistic indications of how students across New Jersey do in math and all. The bottom line is those are the most rigorous those are the most rigorous grade levels for mathematics, 6, 7, and 8. I think that's a fair statement. It's a little more absolute than maybe Dr. Dolan would be, but that's a fair, it's close characterization, I think. So, yeah. Okay, so then there's race and ethnic groups. The state breaks this information down that way as well. So 81.6% white, 5.6% Hispanic, 2.2% Black or African American, 8.6% Asian. So you'll see the subgroup performance for those. You'll see similar trends as far as separation between us and the state. There are others in case anybody's really familiar with these reports, but like Pacific Islander and so forth. But if there was 0, I didn't put them up there. But there are other race and ethnic groups. If there was 0, I didn't put them up. So there's the white subgroup compared with the state. Again, so this is ELA, the first, it'll be ELA for each of the subgroups, then I'll come back around to math. So this is ELA, grades 3 through 10. And this is the Hispanic subgroup. And there's African American. I did the grade span collection there as well, because the population there is 2.2%. That's the Asian subgroup. It's still ELA. And now we're over to math. So this is the population subgroup of white. Hispanic. African American in mathematics. And Asian. All right, so that.
So Paul, are we following up? So those slides are the first time that you start to see where the state the state, there's a gap in the other direction where we're just a little bit below the state. So you said we use this data to sort of follow up and drill down. I think it was the Asian subgroup and that. So are we going back and sort of taking a look, like go back to the ELA Asian, is there something going on in 6th and 7th grade
Right.
that we need to be taking a look at with respect to that subgroup?
Well, yeah, we took a close look at it. It doesn't jump out as a big.
It's not a huge
Right,
disparity,
but
I see, but it's
it's-
big in the sense that we generally have, the blue's much taller, right, in most
Right.
circumstances.
So what I can understand is that in 6th and 7th grade in particular, we've been looking very closely at informational texts in ELA. So that's doing analysis based on informational text versus something, like reading a novel and you do an analysis. We seem to, it's not just we in Westfield, it's the state, but typically students have a little bit more success writing about fiction than analyzing nonfiction. And so we have been focused on that. It doesn't necessarily explain why we're a tick or two off of, in our Asian subgroup, the state. But when we looked, that's what we saw, a little bit of the informational text piece there. In a slide or two, I'll mention some of the areas that we have on our radar.
Okay.
And yeah, but it's, again, it's so variable, it's hard to really see a definitive trend in anything. Okay, wrong way. Oh, I am going, wait, sorry. Okay, I just want to make sure that we all remember all those. Okay, so. Side note, so I came in and Marianne said, you want the clicker? I said, sure, give me the clicker. She says, let me show you how to use like a, I don't need to be shown, I don't need training for the clicker. You were right, I needed clicker training. There should be a slide on that. Areas for growth. So they give us these things that are called district evidence statements, and they're useful. They're kind of cool. People like them. Meaning the principals look at them along with the supervisors. And so what I'd like to do is just spend a minute or two talking about how we use the data. So for each grade level and each content area, you'll see this. And what this is the blue boxes are the state scores, state performance. And by the way, it goes from most challenging question at the bottom to the less challenging or least challenging questions at the top. So you'll see the trend for the statewide, and then you'll see the green ones are Westfield. And what we do, because the smaller your population, the more variable it could be. Example, there are so along the bottom, those are standards or strands that we can specifically look at and say, wow, so one of those circles might indicate a type of question. So I've circled a green dot from Westfield that's a little closer to the state than we normally are. I mean, this is what we're down to. We're like, oh, the gap isn't wide enough. And so when we look at that, it'll give us a question type to look at, and then that's how we get a sense of where we might want to look. But we have to keep in mind that there are so many variables. For example, year to year, each grade level of students is a different group of kids. And you see that from time to time. It's not typical, but every now and then you say, wow, this is just a very high-performing cohort of kids. And so if you go year to year, it might look like you dipped a little, but they were just off the charts in a particular cohort, for example. So this is what we do. We do it with English language arts. We do it with math. The two supervisors do a really good job of deconstructing this. They gave us like really 10-page reports on each one. And in each case, I will ask them, please give me a sense of, so that I can share with the community, what the trends are, the areas that we need to grow. I mean, I would prefer to have a slide. I can show you an example of, that's our administrative, that was an in-service where the teachers and a principal were looking at all this data, and they grow from that. So this is just a sample, because I would put them all up there, but they're so variable. It was difficult for the supervisors to narrow down and say the entire grade should be looking at this, that, and the other. But this is what they provided. This is just one page for one grade where Liz D'Alessandro gave some areas of strength on the left, and then she coded it according to those evidence statements, and then on the right, areas for growth. So we'll look at that, we'll share that with the teachers, but the area for growth may just be indicated by 2 questions on this evidence statement. I'm not doing it on purpose. Okay, well, that's not my fault. So the evidence statement with the squiggly lines thing, that's what we're looking for. So those circles might just indicate 2 questions. So it's hard for us to put too much stock in that. Like, you know, we don't want to rewrite our curriculum over it, and we don't necessarily want to put all of our professional development eggs in that basket. But we will look at it, and that's why the teachers sit with it. They'll sit with it at department meetings, and the supervisor or the principal, and we'll look at other metrics as well. So, you know, we have midterms if it's in the secondary level grades that we can look at, and certainly teachers just have a really good sense of where their students are at. All of that being said, typically what you might hear, I mentioned it earlier, so from math, we always need to continue to work on reasoning and modeling. So that's like critical thinking at a math level. Sometimes supporting content, so that means supporting your response to a math answer, supporting evidence type of thing. And then in ELA, it's always informational text. Those are like higher order skills, so it would make sense that those are typically the areas where it looks like we can grow, because those are the most rigorous areas. And so we may not have capped out at that, if that makes any sense, or if that's the right term. So yeah, it's hard. I went through it a few times, and so a qualifier might be something along the lines of, you know, the test changed that year, or like for the high school, for example, we moved in one of the math assessments from, I think it was Algebra 2, from 14% passing to, you know, to like 50-something%. But that was because that was the year where we had more students take the test. It was just, we wanted to make sure that as many students were taking the test so that we could have better data to collect, and also to make sure that with all these changes in the graduation requirements, that we didn't get caught, you know, unaware, and maybe they made a change and that might have made it complicated for students to graduate. So, you know, it's really hard to tie down any particular variables. There's one floating around in there where it looked like 7th grade math, the girls are performed lower relative to boys this year, and that's not typical. So then we got to go in there and see what's going on with that. But it's, I could put that up there, but it's so variable and it's not consistent. So I would just say, you know, we need to continually look at, you know, relative to this data, other data, the curriculum itself, and just what teachers are telling us about what they see with their students in the classrooms.
Paul,
Yes.
how come we don't have a green dot over every question?
That's a very good question. So there was no question in that grade for that sample. I mean, there just wasn't one on the test.
Oh, okay.
So it's possible that a question. Now, I should say that this particular sample, for example, is relative to the questions that our students received. So let me say that again. So each green circle represents a Westfield percentage or a Westfield achievement on that particular question / standard. So then the corresponding one would show up from the state. So what dictates it is if whether or not we had the question asked of us. So if there's nothing there, it means we just didn't have that particular standard. So the test itself, not every single test for every single kid tests for every single standard.
Okay.
Does that make any sense? Yeah.
Yeah, it does, it does.
I heard it. It sounded all right.
Yeah, I can remember like taking SATs in high school and coming out and talking to kids who had different versions of the test, different numbers of sections sometimes, or like a test section in an area that, you know, I didn't have the same text session. And that's just part of standardized testing.
Right, right. And,
Yeah.
you know, for SAT, that might seem unfair. I'm sure they try to make sure that it's as fair as possible. The other thing is just fatigue from taking, sometimes there's whole sections on SAT that don't count, but they're testing for future questions. And well, that could have caused fatigue, all those variables. I mean, everywhere you turn, right? But in this case, I think they do try to balance the ones that are rigorous with maybe ones that aren't. So. We talked about that. All right, so then there are these two other assessments. This is the Access for Ls. That's the English language learners. So who takes it? Those are the students that are identified when they come, either if they come into the district or from year to year. This test lets us know how proficient they are and if they need services in English language arts. Our population hovers between, say, 45 and low 50s as far as the whole district is, goes. That's where that 0.7% comes from. So who is required? Why is it required? It's through the Every Student Succeeds Act. It's a great requirement. We really do learn a lot about where our students are at, and it's universal. All students take it, so I think it is very useful. And it's a good test according to the experts, like Enrique. What does it test for? It tests for listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So those are the English language development standards with regard to ELL students. It's a 6-level rubric for scoring. One is a score of 1 means you're entering the language proficiency. 2 is emerging, 3 is developing, 4 is expanding, 5 is bridging towards proficiency, and then 6, you've reached proficiency in English language. So these are our numbers. 43 English language learners took the Access for Ls last year. So we test from grades 3 up, so the number might have been a little higher than that, but it's younger kids probably. 13 received a passing score. Passing score is 4.5 or higher on that scale of 6. And then 8 additional ELL students were exited from the program because there are other metrics. So they may have scored just close to the 4.5, but it was clear to the teachers and based on some other evidence that they were able to move out of the program.
Paul, typically how long does a student stay in the ELL program?
Yeah, it really
obviously
depends.
it depends on age, and
Right.
where they came from, and all that.
Well, I think because Enrique, our supervisor of the ELL, spent so much time, he could probably give you a ballpark of something like, I bet you he could say, this kind of student, he just knows is going to take X amount of time typically. I guess it really just depends on that baseline. So
So I mean, the fact that a third roughly passed
yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean anything if people are in the program for 3 years.
Yeah, right. So this is one of those ones where it's so variable, it's difficult for me to provide you like with a trend and what that might mean.
Right, because
yeah.
sometimes it depends on the age the student is introduced to English, right?
Mhm.
Because they pick it up a bit easier when they're younger. Additionally, I mean, you have some of these students, their parents are corporate transfers, and the parents speak English, so they can help at home speaking English, versus
Right.
somebody whose entire family speaks a different language, and when they're home, all they listen to is a different language. So there really is a wide variety of
Mhm.
it. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. So that was our ELLs. Then there's this final type of testing, the dynamic learning maps. Again, who takes it? Those are students in grades 3 through 8 and grade 11. So they're aligned with the New Jersey Student Learning Assessment tests. So they're aligned with the regular tests, but they don't look like them at all. They follow the same guidelines for who needs to be tested. And and as I said, that particular test is online when possible. It's paper if not. It's adaptive though to an extent. Our teachers work really closely there's 5 students, so they work really closely. They have to go through annual training, so there are modules. They get sort of retrained, refreshed each year. And this is a good example of where the test itself can inform the teachers of what might be in the IEP for these students and also what expectations might be. But it's a high challenge. It's a high challenge for these students to move up to the target level and past it. So it tests for, the tests ELA, math, and science. So this particular emerging, approaching, at target, and advanced, there are 4 scoring possibilities there. The English language arts one, so of the 5 students, 4 were at emerging and 1 met the target. And then in math, 5 students were tested and 5 were emerging. Okay, so I'm about to just kind of blow through the slides and tell you what's coming for the spring and where we're at with that. But if there are any more questions about, the numbers themselves, I think sharing with you what we do with the data, I think, is important. Anything else? Okay, good. So, here's what we're looking forward to in the spring. Pretty much the same situation where we have the ELA and math, grades 3 through 11, science 5, 8, and 11, and then the DLMs and access mimic those as well. So this you can't read from your seats necessarily, but when we post this, if it's on your computer screen, you might be able to see it. It's also on our website under curriculum, and I'll show you that slide in a second. But the point is the graduation requirements, most recent ones, are from June 2019, and that's what they have published. We keep monitoring what comes out of the state legislature and when things are finally approved, voted on. But right now, we're working under this most recent memo for graduation requirements. So if parents or students are interested, or you are, you can find this on the website or in this presentation. This is page 2 of that, and it's that matrix that tells you the alternate assessments that can be applied for the graduation requirement. And there are parent resources, parent information really on anything regarding state testing. So if you went to curriculum, you would see statewide assessments, and then you would go to that, and you'd have more options there.
Oh, so there's no graduation requirements for the current freshman class? Is that?
Well, no, so 2020, no.
Oh, here, the bottom.
The bottom.
Committed to providing fair notice eventually.
They're still thinking about it.
And the commissioner has presented it to the New Jersey State Board of Education, and I don't believe they took a vote on it at the last meeting, so they're having another meeting, so I think we're going to be updated on that, but there was a proposal.
The last meeting was today, right?
Was it?
I think so.
It might have been, yeah.
I know the goal was really at the high school level, hopefully, to narrow that down to 1 ELA at the high school and 1 math, but that's just in discussion right now. Okay, all right. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Principal.
And there is a second presentation tonight. And the second one happens to be very different, but it's still a state requirement. The New Jersey Department of Education requires this. So they call for every public school district in New Jersey to somehow celebrate the Week of Respect, right? And that Week of Respect that was set by the state happens to have been last week. Now, we like to call it the Week of Extra Respect, because obviously that is not the only time during the year where we are paying attention to that really important thing for all of our students to learn. And the respect we talk about with all of our students, whether we're talking about our youngest ones or our high schoolers, making sure that they develop a sense of respect for themselves and respect for others, and then also respect for community. Those are things obviously needed, not just while these students are with us, but they're required in life for a good life. So what are some of the examples of what we stress during this week? So we have a code of conduct that's developed in Westfield. Every year we have a group of representatives from our community who meet with people who work in the district to look at our code of conduct and make sure that it's appropriate. So the code of conduct is reviewed. And as you might imagine, the grade level meetings at the high school where the code of conduct is reviewed are a little bit different than when Lincoln School is talking about what's expected in a code of conduct, right? It definitely changes as the students get older, and it's tailored for the age of the students. A number of our schools look at 6 pillars of character as their framework. Also 7 habits of happy kids. There are so many great lessons, so many great stories and books on inclusiveness and promoting tolerance. Those of you who have children in your families at all, please make sure when you're buying the books, look for books that have those lessons. There are so many great ones out there. Encouraging lots of examples of extra kindness. The students do respond to positive reinforcement. So when someone does take a moment to help somebody who's in need in any way, to really acknowledge them, you'll see some examples of that. kindness motivational videos and songs. Our music teachers are great with getting those songs that are trying to encourage everybody to do the right thing. And you know what? The kids walk away with that. They hear those words in their heads, and they're worthwhile. And then you'll even see an example of themed clothing days and how that helps with respect. So let's start with the high school here. So this happens to be a comparative religions class, and the students in that class created graphic designs to promote tolerance of and explain different religions and showed symbols for that and used their skills in that manner. We get to the intermediate level. We really promote the idea of being an upstander, not a bystander. It's so easy to just let something happen and to not be part of it. But these students at Roosevelt happen to be recognized for being upstanders, to seeing something they thought was wrong and for doing something about it and standing up to that. Similarly, over at Edison, they have the teens learning respect and compassion. Now, they meet with counselors and they plan leadership activities to work with other students in the school. So they're practicing, developing their own leadership skills. And then at the elementary level, there are so many ways to promote respect. So at McKinley, you see them playing a game that's called Respect Scoop, and it identifies respectful behaviors. So they're having fun, but they're also learning that and maybe building their own strategies for how to do that. In Wilson, they have ambassadors of kindness and respect. It's a good thing. Dr. Recess came to Tamaulipas and talked about how when you're playing, how you can foster that, how you can foster fair play. And then you'll see in Washington examples of reading and sharing stories. And again, that truly is powerful for our students, not just the young ones, but it continues throughout the grades. You can see Franklin School there. They're, not only are they learning about the 6 pillars of character, each grade has a different color shirt, and it focuses on a different pillar of character, and they work through that as they go through the school. Here comes the clothing over at Jefferson. There they are wearing mismatched clothes to reinforce respect for differences. It's an easy way to teach that things can be different, and because it's different doesn't mean it's not worthy of respect. It means it's different, and it can be fun even if you put your plaids with your polka dots and all the rest of it, and a lot of people do enjoy doing that, adults as well as kids, I find. And perhaps one of my favorites, because this is starting from our youngest kids at Lincoln. They're playing a compliment game, right? And they pass the ball to the next person, and they come up with a compliment they can say honestly about somebody else. Well, what a great thing. I mean, I think balls should be passed around in a lot of groups where we all practice how to do compliments, and because you get better at what you practice. You know? So we really do, we actually enjoy the week of extra respect, but we work on it all the time. It is vital, and what I remind everybody in our community is, so how are the kids really learning? They're really watching us. They're watching all of the adults. They're watching their teachers, sure. They're watching their paraprofessionals, sure. Their principals, yeah, absolutely. They're watching everybody. And they see when we don't have the same answer as someone else, when we disagree on something, how do we do that? You know, are we showing respect even though we have very different points of view? Because if we're not, they're going to learn that that's what you do when you disagree with someone. And that's not good for their future, honestly. So this is something very important to us. We take it very seriously. We enforce it all the time, and we'll keep doing it.
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Dolan. Thank you, Paul, for all the information. I know it's a lot of data. And I know a lot of our supervisors love that data to get back and continue to work on our curriculum and our programs and so forth. And you know, I appreciate the overview for the board and for the community. So thank you very much for all your work. And Dr. Dolan, I know how important the week of extra respect is to you, and seeing the kids and how they participate, and definitely singing. I have, you know, 30-year-olds who still can sing that special song from their elementary school, and they can, you know, word for word, they can sing that particular song. So it does stay with them for a long period of time. So thank you for both reports. At this time, I'd like to put forth to approve the minutes of the board meeting held on September 17th, 2019, and the private minutes of September 17th, 2019. Do I have a second? Kent, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Move on to personnel. Amy.
Okay. I would like the board to consider personnel items 1 through 26. Can I have a second? Rob, thank you. Dr. Dolan, I believe you have...
I do. I
Peter
do.
Cole.
As you can imagine, one of the most important jobs in our district, and they're all important, but one of the most important is the supervisor of buildings and grounds. We have many schools. They're old. We have a lot of grounds, and it's important that we keep them up to date and in the best condition they can be for our students. We do have a recommendation for the new supervisor of buildings and grounds, and I think I'll turn this over to our business administrator, Dana Sullivan.
Thank you. So as many of you know, after 25 years in the district, Mike Morris, our current supervisor of buildings and grounds, is retiring on December 31st. So we did do a search, quite extensive search, and tonight we were happily asking the board to approve Sean MacArthur to fill that position. Sean has extensive experience in landscaping, facilities management, and maintenance. He also is experienced in working in school districts, and he's currently the facilities director in Lacey Township. He's a certified educational facility manager, holds a commercial license for pesticides, and also a fireman's boiler black seal license. So we are enthusiastic, looking forward to Sean joining our family on January 1st, and we're asking the board to approve his contract this evening.
All right. Great, thank you. I'll ask you, do you want to say a couple words?
Do you want to vote first?
Let's
Maybe we'll make it official.
Let's make it official first. I think after all this, I'd finally get a chance.
Michael Beelan,
Yes.
Ken Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Robert Garrison,
Can I wait till I hear what you have to say? Yes.
Brian Morrissey,
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Over enthusiastically.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Congratulations, Sean.
I just want to take a quick second to say I really appreciate the opportunity to come into a wonderful school district and to, obviously I take the job very seriously as well to keep those kids safe. There's a lot of people out there that don't know what we do and they count on us to take care of their children, and I take that very seriously. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity and look forward to working with everybody going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Rob, do you want to change your vote?
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
So we very much welcome you to the district in January, right in the middle of our snow period.
Very battle tested.
And you have some big shoes to fill, and I'm excited to see how you grow in the position and what you bring to Westfield.
I
So,
also wish Mike the best.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Great.
So, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.
I mean, for somebody who seems very happy to be coming here, and
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
They seem so happy that they have the job, they want to be here. We couldn't be luckier. So,
Yep.
Gretchen, facilities.
Yes. So I'm going to actually read something. I wanted to make sure I didn't leave anything out. But I wanted to offer a report and follow-up to the board's discussions on updates to and the creation of security vestibules at our 10 school buildings. In the discussions, you'll remember we talked about creating vestibules through which individuals would enter and then have an interface with someone in the main office before they could enter into the actual building, which would require us to build new entryways to all those buildings. So at the beginning of the year, George Duthie, our architect, reviewed the work that would be required at all 10 of the school buildings with the facilities committee. The estimated total cost of this work is just shy of about $5 million. It's quite extensive in a few buildings, as you know. You can imagine McKinley, Jefferson, the office is not particularly close to the main entrance. Given that the work likely would not be done until the summer of 2020 or 2021, even given currently lined up projects, the costs would likely be even higher. So the primary question that arose from that review within the context of the facilities committee is, would the creation of the vestibules offer an additional layer of security that would justify the high price tag? And also, how would we pay for that, right? So in other words, was this the best use of district and taxpayer resources? Given that we had just implemented the new policy of no visitors without an appointment during the school day, the Facilities Committee did not believe the creation of vestibules would offer any real meaningful additional security. We asked Dr. Dolan and Dana Sullivan to review these questions with Stonegate, the Department of Education, and Tom Gambino. In each instance, the experts confirmed that the new system was just as effective in keeping individuals outside the building. The Facilities Committee asked the Long Range Planning Committee to further review and discuss the issue, and Amy, not to step on any toes, I'll just report out that the Long Range Planning Committee concurred with the Facilities Committee's conclusion. Because the vestibules do not offer an additional layer of security not already contemplated by our new policy on visitors to our schools, we did not believe that it was a thoughtful and responsible use of district resources at this time. Finally, I just wanted to add also that the Facilities Committee at our last meeting heard a report from Dr. Dolan and Dana Sullivan on their various meetings with vendors for identification management systems. They had sat through a number of them, and they presented what they had, their conclusions from that. There had been public conversation, as you know, about the implementation of such systems at our schools where a visitor's ID would be swiped. Dr. Dolan and Dana confirmed what we had previously heard, that the only information provided by these systems currently is whether an individual is a sex offender, which is information we already are provided with by law enforcement. Further, the committee did not believe the systems offered any additional security measures, as no vendor had a system that could be used outdoors. So in other words, the person would actually have to physically be in the building before they could be swiped. So we just didn't think that it really added any layer of security. So we'll continue to monitor any advances in the technology. Specifically, I know that there was some mention that some of these vendors, or at least one of them, had mentioned they were trying to figure out a way to do like an outdoor kiosk. You then have additional issues with moisture and all of that, vandalism and things like that. But we certainly can continue to monitor if those advances offer an opportunity. Of course, an outside kiosk is likely to increase the price of just the monitoring system because it requires some modifications to the building. But I did want to publicly report out on those conclusions. I'm happy to take questions from anyone that hasn't had a chance to either participate in the Facilities Committee or the Long-Term Planning Committee's conversation about those, and Dr. Dolan and Dana can certainly offer more insight as well.
Wasn't one of the other reasons that this was only going to protect 10 of the doors out of the district's 126 doors?
Yep.
Something like that?
Yeah,
Correct.
that's correct, you're right.
Yeah, which is consistent with what we've talked about when we've discussed security at previous board meetings last year. Yeah, so if you throw everything at just the main doors, you may be overdoing it in one location when you need to be considering each school as a whole. Yeah.
Yeah, and the point of a vestibule is to allow somebody inside, but stop them so they can get inside a small room to determine whether they're supposed to be in the building or not. With our requirement for appointments 24 hours in advance and a camera system outside, we know whether the person's supposed to be let into the building or not before they get there. So the front lawn is our vestibule now. It's not like we're completely discarding the idea. We already had it.
And Dr. Dolan, do you have any updates from the schools? I was fortunate to be at Jefferson today, where I had to sign in, and their one page of visitors started on October 9th.
Wow.
And I was at the bottom of the page for today on October 15th. So for me, I was just trying to do a little bit of visual while I happened to be there. So I would assume they've seen a lot less people coming into the school. That one page has lasted, whatever that is, 4 or 5 days to visitors at Jefferson School.
Yeah, that is true. All the schools are reporting that. It's still early, obviously. We're in the middle of October, so we still continue to monitor it. Tomorrow, I'll have a meeting with the 3 secondary principals. One of the topics will be to get feedback from them regarding it. When we meet with parent groups, we ask the parent groups about it, what their vantage point is. I can't say enough about how cooperative the parents have been. I think every school has 2 or 3 stories about parents who weren't cooperative, but that's it. And other parents understand why they're doing it. They understand what the requirements are. They're using the boxes outside. The secretaries are getting many fewer interruptions than they used to. So they can concentrate, and when somebody is at the door, they are aware that they're coming. That system is working well because of the cooperation of the parents. And the people who are coming are people who truly have important business to take care of at the school. They have legitimate reasons. So far it's working well. We continue to work. For example, we have, play and concert seasons. We talked about that. They're coming up. So last week, I was working with the supervisor of fine arts. He had worked with all of his music and drama teachers and all the principals to see what are the answers for this building, which looks different than that building, which has a different setup than the next building, and how are we going to do that? Again, the whole time we've been doing this, we've been trying to find a balance, right? We don't want to stop people coming in. We don't want to stop the opportunities for our kids to perform, but we also want to provide safety to the best we can. We've also reached out to the various community groups who use our schools to talk about what their responsibilities are, and they're working through those as well. So it's definitely not a we're done and that's over. It's definitely something we still spend a lot of time with. We're still listening. We're still listening to suggestions or observations because we'll learn from those. And we'll continue to learn and do the best we can with it.
One other point I want to mention, during the technology meeting a couple weeks ago, I had asked Brian, when we show the ID, are we able to capture that information that's on someone's license? So there's a constant video monitor that we are capturing that information, so if we need to go and look back at the tape, we can go and look at what the person is and their identification number that they have entered the building. So we're not just capturing their signature when they sign the book, we're also capturing that, that ID information.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Gretchen.
You're welcome, thanks.
Long-range planning.
Yep, we had a first meeting of the year at the end of September. Gretchen did sort of steal my thunder, but she did it so well, I'm gonna not have a problem with it at all. And we were in a slightly earlier phase of discussing what facilities got to discuss a little more holistically. So we do continue the conversation about security. We were set to have another meeting prior to this meeting, but we've put that off until prior to our next meeting at the end of the month. So at that point, I may have a little bit more to say about the other big elephant in the room is the full-day kindergarten referendums that we are getting ready for. So we'll talk a little more about that at our next meeting. Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. Brendan, policies.
Yes, I ask the board to approve policy item number 1.
Second.
Thank you, Ken. Policies committee met a couple weeks ago and approved revisions to, looks like 10 policies, and I just want to call out a couple of them. Starting with 7440, school district security. This is revisions to the law, revisions to state law requiring panic alarms and other security upgrades. District policy now is ready for that when it goes into full effect. But also in that law, and our policy now specifically prohibits students or staff from propping doors open or opening doors for anybody that's locked out of the building. Everybody has to go to the main office, not just by district policy, but by state law. And the others, the last three, 8600, 8630, and 8670, are all in response to that horrific bus accident on Route 80 last year, where a student from Paramus and a teacher tragically were killed. The state went and revised long overdue safety standards for school buses, school bus driver qualifications, and the responsibilities of bus drivers. Our policies now comply with that as well. But the double-edged sword there is there was already a bus driver shortage, and that's increasing requirements on bus drivers is only going to make that shortage worse. We have a finance item on the agenda tonight because we had to go find different bus vendors. And luckily, we don't have bus drivers as employees. Districts, particularly in South Jersey, They're having their bus route start at 5:30 in the morning,
Hmm.
just because they don't have drivers. Any questions?
The use of school facilities policy that's in the notes for the record?
Mm-hmm. There was a minor revision to the regulation, not the policy itself.
And what was the revision?
There were. Go ahead.
It's to permit PTOs to use our middle school theaters for
Okay.
one dress rehearsal and 2 performances without a fee.
Okay.
We also made a revision to allow to, in certain cases, we reclassified the town of Westfield.
Yeah,
We
that's
had them as a group 2, and now they're a group 1,
Mhm.
if I
Yes.
recall, so, yeah.
But they'll still pay overtime. So they're sort of a 1A. Any other questions? Gannon?
Mike Beelan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Robert Garrison,
Yes.
Brian Marcy,
Yes.
Gretchen Oleg,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes,
Amy Rue.
Yes.
thank you, Brenda. Amy, curriculum.
Yep, I would like the board to consider curriculum items 1 through 3. Can I have a second? Thanks, Rob. Okay. Again, no curriculum particularly today. We have field trips as attachment number 1. Item number 3 is intern and volunteer candidates for the year. And then the middle item, we don't have an attachment on. I did summarize briefly in my notes that I sent around prior to our last meeting to board members. We had discussed in our September curriculum instruction program, our SIP meeting, a proposal that Paul had been talking about with Liz D'Alessandro, the math supervisor, about instituting a pilot summer program to allow high school students to be able to kind of catch up on math. You know, we had talked, when we were talking about assessments, some of our students in 8th grade take Algebra 1, some of our students take Math 8 at that point. There is a certain appetite amongst some students to be able to double up, which has traditionally been offered in the sophomore year of high school. For those students, if you take Math 8 as an 8th grader, you take Algebra 1 as a freshman in high school. And then for those kids who want to be able to take calculus by their senior year, they would take geometry as a sophomore and take Algebra 2 also as a sophomore. And in discussion among math students, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but, with the math teachers, math supervisor, and in looking at how other districts do things, some districts have been offering a summertime option as a way to focus exclusively on that second math class, that college prep Algebra 2 class, I guess. Yeah, in that summer between sophomore and junior year.
So it's a summer geometry class.
Summer geometry class, the first one, right.
It's everything, yeah.
Yeah. So it seems like a good idea. There are standards that are being developed that I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about in SIP as we go forward, but at this point, we're asking for your permission to go ahead with that pilot program. It would require that students have, I think, a B+ average by the end of the 3rd marking period in order to be considered eligible. And there would be a fee that the families would pay. Financial assistance would be available for families who couldn't afford it. And I think it's a 6-week program, is that right?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And
So,
is there a minimum number of students required for us to run the program?
8.
8. Okay.
And is there a maximum?
Well,
I mean, like, could kids
Yeah.
get closed out if it was?
well, if it's too big a class, it'd be like a regular class where
Right.
it'd be too big. But based on recent history of kids interested in doubling up, we think we're safe with one section.
One section.
Great.
Okay. So, yes,
I
Rob?
just wanted to add, part of the discussion also centered on the piece in terms of the fee. We did want to take into consideration those who might not be able to afford a class or looking at the pricing. So there is something within the policy or for that summer class for financial support if it's needed. And there's also discussion as to whether or not it would also be unfair to only offer this type of alternative during the summer and not during the school year. So I know that's something that will be continually discussed, just because there may be some people that go away for the summer or have summer jobs or not able to attend a summer class and may still want to double up. So I know Paul was talking about just continually looking at this and figuring out what suits the most students and moving forward and making sure it's best for the district as well.
Yep.
Well, it's a fantastic idea, and I hope it's successful to the point that we expand it to other disciplines as well. Some of the lab sciences where we're just limited by physical space.
So is the thinking that if I take geometry over the summer, then I don't have to take it during the school year, I can jump right up to algebra 2 or that kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd have the required number of hours for the course to actually count.
Mhm.
So, yes, absolutely. So the students will receive the same number of hours, the same objectives for the curriculum, yes.
Okay. And then tying it back to Paul's earlier presentation, then in that spring, then would I have to take the New Jersey testing for geometry and algebra?
I believe you'd have to take the geometry at the end of the summer.
Oh, at the summer,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. So,
Mike Belan,
Yes.
Ken Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Robert Garrison,
Yes.
Brian Morrissey,
Yes.
Gretchen Olick,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Peggy Oster.
Yes.
Amy Root.
yes, and I'd just like to say our October SIP meeting is next week. So by our next board meeting, there'll be more to talk about.
Great. Finance. I'd like the board to consider items 1 through 15. Do I have a second? Brendan? I'd like to call out a couple of gifts that we received. Number 7 is accept gifts from the Westville Coalition for the Arts to be used as followed. $1,670.24 to purchase instrumental music folders for Westfield High School concert band students, and $2,070 for travel expenses for the concert choir's rehearsals and performance in New York City in April 2020. I'd also like to accept a gift of $1,114.34 from Governor Livingston High School in honor of Dr. Derek Nelson. The funds will be used by Westfield High School to support any school and community initiatives that embrace the ideals of Dr. Nelson. This is an amazing gift from one of our neighboring districts, and if people remember back when Derek passed on, the Governor Livingston High School took a picture and sent it to us when they were all in formation of a W, and they continue to raise this money in honor of Dr. Nelson. So I want to do an extra shout out to them for supporting us and being a great neighboring district. So it's a wonderful opportunity, and I know I was with Mrs. Fendis, and she's going to try and find the right thing to do with that money, which we hopefully will be reporting in the near future. Also, we'd like to accept a gift of $1,200 from the Westfield Rotary Club Foundation to be used to add more items to the Learning Garden at Jefferson School. Just as an aside, I was there today for the ceremony, opening up the garden, and it is amazing. It's beautiful. It's not only just a great garden, it's a great learning environment for students and so forth. And whoever, I believe his name is Mr. Thornton, he does have a green thumb. The eggplants were beautiful, and it was a great thing addition to that school. So, and I thank them for going out and looking for grants and stuff to help pay for some of those things. Also accept a gift of $1,887.90 from the Westville Choral Parents Association to purchase 6 handheld wireless microphones for the Westfield High School choral students. Also, and the last one is accept a gift of $5,000 from a student achievement grant awarded to Megan Lynn at Roosevelt Intermediate School from the NEA Foundation to purchase kits, material, and supplies for STEAM. Thank you to everybody. Your support of our school is, amazing and something that we truly appreciate. So, thank you. Any questions? Peter?
Mike Belan,
Yes.
Kent Diamond,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Rob Garrison,
Yes.
Brian Morrissey,
Yes.
Gretchen Olick,
Yes.
Tara Porto,
Yes.
Peggy Oster,
Yes.
Amy Root.
Yes.
Technology, Michael.
Sure. On September 20th, we had our technology meeting with Brian. And one of the key things that we went over was all the summer projects that we had accomplished during the summer. And there were, I 26 or 28 projects, so going through each one of them. But some of them are just general maintenance things and network infrastructure and things that we're doing. But just some of the key things were the digital electricity project is on its way. They are waiting for some power supply, uninterruptible power supply parts in order to get that finalized. But that's going to happen in the next few months. But some of just the other things like the Chromebook carts that we put in. But from a security perspective, there's a great focus on that as well. We've added additional cameras to many of the different schools. And the high school door project they have it almost complete. They're waiting on the Wi-Fi portion where we can actually control the doors electronically. So that just takes a lot of time in order to get that implemented, but it is in progress, and they are working on finalizing that, so that'll be in place. So there's good progress on that front. We do have a meeting coming up this Friday, which Janine Gotko, our Master Technology Instructor, is going to talk about the professional development that's gone on throughout the district for all the teachers, and also just the instructional technology that we're using throughout the district, and how we're implementing technology within the district from a teacher to student standpoint. So look forward to that.
Great, thank you. I'd like the board to consider the notes for the record.
Considered.
I keep up.
That's when we don't vote on.
We don't vote on it.
No, we don't. We just consider them.
We just consider them.
So considered.
So consider, there, that sounds good.
Votes have been suppressed.
Do we have any any unfinished business?
Just a question to confirm, Brendan, do we have a policies meeting tomorrow night?
Yes, we do. 7 o'clock.
Okay, thanks, just wanted to make sure.
Any unfinished business? Any new business? Any liaison reports?
I have one. The PTC Special Ed Committee met just about 2 weeks ago. Dr. Weissman and his staff, or the staff of the district, gave a nice presentation, and it was the first time I sat through one, and I have to commend Dr. Weissman for a very, very thorough, compact, but very thorough presentation. And I thought the questions from the parents were very thoughtful. Obviously, it's a difficult time when you're dealing with special ed, and sometimes you don't have the questions, or you don't know what questions to ask. And so Dr. Weissman and staff tried to jump ahead as much as possible, but also were very responsive. And I thought it was just a tremendous night, and so I thank you for that.
Brendan?
Yes. So on September 27th, I was sworn in as a new board of director of the New Jersey School Boards Association.
Congratulations.
So there's 21 of us, one for each county, rotating 3-year term, 7 per year. So at that meeting, we got a preview of the School Board Association's Mental Health Task Force report, which is 104 pages with 78 specific recommendations for school districts to enhance the social and emotional learning and mental health of our students. It'll be previewed to the public at the convention, but if anybody wants to take a look, I've got an early copy.
Yes. Digital copy?
I have it scanned up, I'll send it out.
Okay.
And if anyone's attending the workshops next week, there is a seminar just on that report next week.
It was 18 months worth of work with 27 different people from around the state. Superintendents, teachers, mental health professionals, and a couple board members.
And actually, our director of counseling, Maureen Mazaris, is at a meeting tonight where she's going
The
to...
Middlesex County Association.
Exactly, yeah, she's down there. So yes, I'd love to borrow that.
Absolutely.
Maybe we'll have one, but I've been waiting for it, actually.
Yes. After that, which took a decent portion of the meeting, we had a speaker from the Rutgers Cooperative Extension. They've partnered with the School Boards Association to take over all of the online training that we do. To bring it up into the 21st century.
Online training for,
The mandatory training we have to do
For the
every year.
I
or
got
every
you,
couple of years.
us, we do, gotcha,
Yeah.
okay.
But they're going to be expanding the offerings through the Board Member Academy. And the first course they're going to be launching when it goes live in January is an artificial intelligence interactive negotiations simulator.
Wow, that's cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
You know,
Rutgers wants to show off what they can do, and school boards wants to work with them.
And the good thing, Brendan, about that is it's the same organization or the same center at Rutgers that does trainings for if you're a housing authority official, appointed or otherwise, if you're an elected official, if you're a member of certain boards that have certain mandatory requirements. So they're very experienced. They've been doing it for a better part of almost 40 years.
They've been managing EMS and firefighter certification trainings. Every non-degree professional certification in the state goes through Rutgers. Lastly, if you're going to the convention, there's an iPhone app this year. They were touting that. And then at the Union County School Boards Association meeting on Wednesday, the 25th, we had people from the county executive superintendent's office and the finance office explaining the budgeting process in a very granular level. What board members are responsible for, what they need to stay out of, really roles and responsibilities. And just a shout out to Dana, it's really nice to hear that Westfield is the district that never has problems. Some districts go back and forth 5 times with submissions that get kicked back for the same errors.
That's what happens when you've done it for 26 years.
She's an award winner too.
Yes. So, and at that meeting, John Bramnick was there, allowed for a question and answer session. So I, again, grilled him about our piece of legislation we have pending, trying to combine the 2 kindergarten votes into one. He says, we introduced the bill, blah, blah, blah. Politics is politics, but invited us to come down and speak to the assembly about why we need it and why we need it done quickly. So more to follow on that.
Great.
Thank you, Brendan, and congratulations.
Yes.
We're very fortunate. That's great. I just had 2 liaisons. I talked a little bit about both of them. I did attend the Westfield High School PTSO meeting, and a little bit in reference to social emotional learning. They brought 2 students who are working programs in the school in relationship to social emotional learning. One is a girl who runs a lunch buddy program. And it's to not have kids not be able to sit with somebody at lunch and find a friend and so forth. And she talked about, how she started the program last year and has adapted it with working with students and so forth, so they don't really feel ostracized. They started a table that you could come sit at, but then they felt like everybody was watching them, like, here you are at the table, that means you have no friends. So they're working on adapting it and then continuing the program going forward as she graduates this year. And there was another girl who spoke of a Silver Linings club that they have, which discusses mental health of students and what we can do to, ease some of the anxiety and so forth at the high school. So it was great to see how not only Maureen and her staff is working, but the students are working together with them to bring some changes at the high school and reduce anxiety. And then this morning, I guess it was this morning, it was a long day, I was at Jefferson. And their PTSO is, they seem to be very organized, and right now they did a survey of all their parents, just asking what they want. They asked the teachers what were their priorities, what their priorities were, tried to mesh them together to create the projects that they want for their fundraisers. And as I said, Dr. Dolan and I were at the opening of their garden in the backyard, and the parents put the time and the effort into it, and it really was, a great facility that they built at the school. So that's my report. Any others?
Yeah, just real quick, Franklin School, they invited me to join them when they were cutting a ribbon on their new playground at the end of September, which just happened to be the day that all the kids were wearing the different shirts that we saw in the picture for the Week of Respect, so that was kind of fun, very colorful. And their pumpkin fair is this Saturday from 10 to 3 at Franklin School. Always a great fun day. It's not just pumpkins. There's a lot more to it. But yeah, the weather looks good for Saturday, so that's great for them. And then the green team for the town is very busy. There's a lot of really passionate volunteers who are excited about sustainability. There was a presentation about creating a rain garden to slow, to gather rain on your property so you don't have ponding and flooding and stuff, and even how to set up your own composting system at your house. And I participated this past weekend in cleanup of one of the parks in town. Got to interact with some of our students, which is great for me since I'm an empty nester this year. So, but that group is tearing it up. They are very excited, and I know Mike's been helping with their website as well as other websites. So there's good information on the town website if you want to know more about that. So, yeah.
And I met with the Edison PTSO this past, actually 2 weeks ago. And it was interesting, it was one of the really nice weather days, and there were concerns about security and whether security procedures were being followed or not. So we actually sat outside for that meeting, and people came to the door, and every time someone would come to the door, they would go, look, what are they doing? And then the person would show the ID, and there was some person carrying a picture, delivering a picture to the front office. And I guess the picture was blocking the view, and, well, I don't know if he showed his ID or not. So Dr. Bolton went inside and confirmed that, yes, he did show his ID. So that was
And that's a good
to
thing.
see.
That
Yes,
helps
I
us.
think
Real time,
it
yeah, it
was
does.
real-time monitoring of what was happening. And this is unrelated to the PTSO, but just on Adams Fest, there's the student cartoon contest that's up there and all the submissions. There's the top 25 submissions and the winners. And there's really some great artwork. So if you want to just take a look, go to adamfest.com and the student cartoon contest, and you'll see a lot of. I can't draw that good. it was just, and I actually got involved in posting it, and as I was doing it, I was like, wow, this is really good stuff. So check it out.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
No, Tomacos is later this week.
Same with Lincoln.
At this time, I'd like to recognize the public for questions and/or comments. When you come to the podium, if you just state your name and your address.
Got the drill down.
I know. I do have to remind some people.
This is shackled from what Paul was presenting. There we go.
Thanks.
Okay.
I'm Megan Brennan, 862 Rahway Avenue. I'm disappointed to hear the report that Gretchen gave tonight. I'm curious as to how the facilities committee works, who's on it. Can you just give me like a little?
Sure, so the entire board works by committee, because we meet in groups of 4, because it doesn't constitute a quorum. And then the committees, we have a policies committee, I mean, you've heard all the reports that are made tonight. And then those committees report up to the board. And so I believe the facilities, y'all help me if I'm wrong, is Kent, myself, Michael, and Brendan, right?
Peggy.
No, I'm on.
Peggy,
I was
sorry.
last year, not this year.
No. So it's myself, Peggy, Michael, and Brendan. Did I get that right? All right. And then also at that meeting, who joins us, of course, is Dana Sullivan. Typically, our architect is present, and the facilities, the head of facilities for the district, Mike Morris.
Okay. So I wasn't prepared for that, for what was announced tonight. So I guess I just want to say that there are a lot of parents in this district who do not think that the current system of, I think it's terrific, as I've said repeatedly, I think it's terrific that all these improvements have been made. I'm fully behind them. I have been in Tamaqua School for various things, and it's obviously working and it's great. But in this day and age, to have the way Tamaqua School works, I know how other schools work, that you walk in the front door, after you've shown your ID, the onus is on you as the visitor to get yourself to the office. You then write your name on a piece of paper that I assume there's just binders and binders full of these papers. I hope they're kept. You get a sticker, you walk through the hall, you go wherever you're going. At the end of your visit, you're required to go back to the office. If people know that, then maybe they do it and they go and sign out. Maybe not. I don't know why we would not want to, at the bare minimum, the vestibule thing, that's a lot of money, I get that. Why we would not want an electronic record of everyone who's entering and exiting the school for $1,700 a school. It's insane to me that we would not want that, because all it tells us is that if the person's a sex offender or not. You would have an electronic record of that person's ID and not having to go back and look at the tape and pull it from the tape. If the information I have been told is correct, the gunman at Tamaqua School had been in that school previously, other times. How were the police able to look that information up, I guess is my question. If that were an electronic record, you could just go in and do a search. I don't know how they did it. I mean, I look at these papers, it's chicken scratch that's written on these papers. There's a way to easily have an electronic record of every person who enters that school. And it's no different than what we have in office buildings around the state, in New York City, a badge with your picture on it. It's unfathomable to me that this is not something that the board thinks is a good idea. So I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed about the vestibules, but I understand everything comes down to money, and there's limited money, which I get.
I'm sorry, I do have to jump in.
Sure.
And I do know that you respect the rules and all of that, and that you appreciate them. So it's certainly money is a part of it, but, I mean, we spent a long time looking at the various visitor management systems. And you're right, they're not expensive. But one of the things that changed our minds was they do have the capability, you have to, you check in and then you have to check out and you have it on your screen and it's all there, right? All 4 companies said, but we all know, they all said this, and these are the salespeople, we all know that people have to come in through one door, but they can leave through any door. So at the end of the day, what you have to do is clear that list, because you're not going to know who left. So it's cheap, but I think it's cheap for a reason.
Well, so all the doors in the school are not, I only
No,
ever
no,
come and go in
that's
the
a
main.
difference. They're talking about other districts that have these visitor management systems, but what is it providing? It's providing that you
Well, if all the
think-
doors are locked,
They're
To
locked,
exit.
but you can exit. We can't lock doors that you can't exit.
Fire code.
For fire code.
okay, so I can exit out of any door at Tamaqua. I follow the rules, so
Yes.
I go
That's
to
great.
the office and I leave.
Right, but most people don't.
And we can monitor on cameras to see where people are leaving, et cetera. So if the system was providing something different than what we can do, I'm all for it. It wasn't a lot of money, and it's not all about money, but it is balancing what something can do with how much money, and can we spend that money in a better way? That's what it is. Now,
Right.
we're actually hopeful that, because we made some suggestions to some of the companies about what they could do differently going forward, and what newer technology might be able to do. So we're hopeful they're going to come up with something, but we didn't close the door on that. We're hoping they can take advantage of some newer things and then come back to us. And we're not against the concept, but just make sure what value is it truly giving us, not just it looks better, or it,
No, it's not that it looks better to my mind. To my mind, it's that you have, in the age of technology that we have now, it's ridiculous that you have people writing their names, whether they write their own names or whatever in there. Their ID's supposed to have been checked, hopefully. But, I mean, it's just, it's crazy to me. So I'm disappointed, but I respect decisions that you've
I
made.
have one question. You mentioned about like the visitor management systems get cleared every day. I'm just trying to understand from a technology standpoint.
So the way, so when somebody checks in, it shows them as actively in the building. If somebody leaves through a different door and doesn't check out, you have, say, 6 people that are still in the building at the end of the day.
And they're really not in the building.
And the building's completely empty, so
Right.
whoever's in charge
That part I
will-
understand,
will
whether
reset.
they're not in the building or have left or not. But it's still keeping a log, though, of everyone that's entered the building. So if someone had entered a building, using this person at Tamaqua, at 4 different points over the past year, we would still have a log
Yes, you
of
would.
when they've entered. Regardless, I understand we're saying that they clear, but we would still have a log and a consistent log.
That's
So if
correct.
we needed to go and report to the police department, saying, okay, this person visited on these 4 dates, that information would not be cleared.
That's correct.
Okay.
I think Dr. Dolan was just responding to the comment about how you can't guarantee people come back to the office to sign out, that the system itself doesn't necessarily ensure that people come back to the office and swipe out.
That I understand. At the end of the day, if we have 5 people that exited out a different door, those would still be in the system and clear, and we're not, and most likely they left. But we're still able to have a log, which we don't have today, and I understand Ms. Brennan's comments about, we have these entries that people are writing, and if we need to go back to them, that where are these logs at this point in time?
Well, we have
even if-
two now, because we have an appointment calendar and we have a log of people, because people are not coming unless they have an appointment, right? So in essence, we have, and I don't know if the calendars are digitally searchable or
Yes,
something.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
I mean, you,
So
no
we have-
longer do we have the one-off, somebody shows up and gets in, right? And so, if the concern is that you don't wanna have to read through a list of names, just search the calendar and then you can correspond it with the handwritten sign-in sheet.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily the case for a parent, yes, but for example, someone making that picture delivery, they're making a delivery, they're not necessarily going to make and call an appointment the day before and say, oh, I have an appointment, I'm delivering a picture. They are making a delivery. Do they have an appointment when they're making a delivery?
Was it like a
Some of them
UPS,
do, like
FedEx
Jersey
guy?
Mike's does, when they deliver those
Yeah.
sandwiches for lunch.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
exactly
They
right.
have an appointment.
But was the appointment, I know it's kind of odd, are they making an appointment for a sandwich 24 hours in advance?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a regular scheduled
Right.
Right.
It's
Delivery.
your-
Right.
So they're a regular schedule, because I know Dr. Bolton said that the postman and I think it was the FedEx driver do not make appointments beforehand. They're just let in automatically because those are consistent people that show up every day.
If they're consistent people, but we still, right, are looking to make sure that they are. If there's somebody who's subbing, we do check to
Right,
make
they're
sure that
required to show their ID, but they
Right.
don't have a 24-hour
Yes,
appointment
those are the
to
few
get in.
exceptions, that's right.
Right.
That's right. But the other ones, really, if the photographer is dropping something off, there's no reason why that person can't be told, you have to contact the school beforehand. There's no reason why. You know,
Yeah,
they
and I
can.
don't know whether the person had an appointment or not, and I realize we're still working through some
Yeah.
systems.
And any contractors, we have a system, they're not gonna just let contractors in. So we've tried to address all those groups who could possibly come to the school, because that doesn't make any sense. We're not letting the parents in, but we let in, a contractor we don't know, we wouldn't do that.
So if a person has visited 4 times over over the past 3 years, we're able to create a report from our calendar system?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we will be in 3 years.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, 3 years going forward, yes.
Going
Right.
forward,
Right.
yes, going forward.
Starting this
okay.
year, yes.
Yeah, well, with any new system, you can only
Yeah,
go
we
from
start
your,
at day one, yeah.
your first day, yeah.
Mhm.
Why would the deliveries be allowed in? Why wouldn't they be left out in like the drop box like the parents are doing when they're bringing things for students?
There are some instances where that can happen and does. It depends how large is the
Yeah.
shipment. The larger schools might have bigger deliveries, but in those cases, generally speaking, that person has to wait there, and generally it's a custodian who comes out to accept that delivery.
And are we confirming beforehand that we're expecting those deliveries?
I imagine we get mail and FedEx at every school pretty much every day.
Well, but I'm talking about the large ones where they couldn't be left outside, not mail and FedEx.
So deliveries that would be like those would be more like paper or things like that. The purchase orders get initiated by the schools, so they know what they're expecting. And if it's something that's initiated by like Mike Morris, then he notifies the schools. So they know what to expect.
There's
Who
a young
the
man.
vendor should be.
Yeah, it's interesting, there's a young man on my block who does delivery for one of the area restaurants that supplies pizzas for some of our schools for Pizza Day. And he said it's something that they're discussing too. So, they're aware of how things are changing and it's having an impact on them as well. So, yeah, it's working.
Just if somebody wants to get in, we don't want them coming in under the guise of a delivery.
Absolutely.
That's the one
Right.
Mhm.
area that might not be as secure.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And every school has been told, if there is a question, the person can wait, or they can come back later, or we'll have to pick up the delivery if there's any question. And that we have their backs when they do that. When I get, somebody haranguing on the phone about something, if they use their best judgment, then that's what we're asking them to do.
So no one can randomly just order lunch anymore if they say, I feel like a sandwich today, they can't order it in that same day.
I know we talked about that, and that was the intent. I'd have to, tomorrow when I talk to the secondary principals, I'll verify with them that that is in fact what's happened.
Because that's what came up during the Edison PTSO meeting while we were sitting outside is, you know, the questions, some of them that just arose here on why do we have to let the mailman and the FedEx in, and Dr. Bolton explained, well, sometimes we're getting expensive deliveries of computers, but they were questioning like, well, we have a Dropbox for the parents, why couldn't we have a Dropbox for the mail and then have one of the secretaries pick up the mail? That was just suggestions that came out of the meeting.
Right, right. Actually, Dr. Bolton did share that with me, so.
I can tell you anecdotally, it's working. My stepson, who's a senior at the high school, went by Jefferson to meet his mom to work on his college application, didn't have an appointment, and was not allowed in the building. So, you know, it's working, and, you know, I'm sure that there's still some kinks, you know, to be worked out, but I think that everybody's being really sensitive and diligent about enforcing the new policy.
And again, suggestions or observations are welcome. You know, we are still working on it, and it's not something that's complete.
Okay, everybody good?
We're good.
Great. So I'd like the board to approve the following resolution. Resolve that the Board of Education move into private session for the purpose of discussing matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, legal matters, and harassment, intimidation, and bullying incidents. And be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. Do I have a second?
Second.
Tara?
There you go.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.